Welcome back everybody, Mad for Steam here once again, and this week we're dealing with Kit 3, which should be a simpler kit. Now forgive me, I have loosely laid the cab on here. I wanted to see how big this behemoth is going to be, and it clearly is going to be big. It's 34 inches long. Now, a lot of people have asked me about a size comparison between a 5-inch gauge loco and what I'm normally used to dealing with, a 16mm loco, so I thought I'd introduce one. Now this is a 7/8 scale model. This is the kind of scale I'm more used to working with. Now this is very close to 16mm, which is 1/19 scale. 7/8 is slightly larger, but for the sake of it, this is a 1/19 scale loco and measuring in at about 10 inches long. Compare this to the 34 inches. I will put metric measurements up here as well, folks. You can see this is a really substantial model. Anyway, enough chat. Let's get on to Kit 3. Before we do that, there are no kit notes for Kit 2, but I do have to dip into what's in the workshop. Now, one of the comments that I did have is you don't want to spend money on an expensive display base. You need a rotating jig. Well, spoiler alert, obviously I'm doing something right because Silver Crest sent me this free of charge. Yes, they gifted it to me, and I don't have a jig. But a lot of comments were made in the YouTube comments section saying you really got to stop this thing rolling off the chassis and you need a scotch. You bet your life I need a scotch. That's the only scotch I know. Apparently scotch is a railway term, and the gentleman who sent me the email replied and said, I don't know what it is. Well, I don't either, and it's certainly not the scotch I know. It's not a scotch egg, I know that as well, because that would just be stupid. In any case, you're far better off having a couple of pork pies. That'll stop it rolling off, but go for the thick crust ones. So let's have a bit of fun and let's have a competition. If anybody out there knows what a scotch is in terms of railways, then please drop it in the comments. Now what I'm going to do, at random for next week, I'm going to select one comment and the winner will receive this. Now this is a limited edition print gifted to me by Silver Crest, and it is painted by a very well-known French artist whose name completely escapes me, but he went to the École de Cuisine de Fromage de Pantin, and it's a very pretty limited edition print. I believe only 60 of them exist, although it's unnumbered. So if you know what a scotch is, drop me a line in the comments. I'll select you at random and I'll tell you next week how you get your print. I'll post it to you anywhere in the world free of charge. So unless you're on Mars or Uranus, it's yours. Look, joking aside, all I've done here is I've got a wood clamp. This is a woodworker's clamp, dead cheap on Amazon and Temu, and all I've done is clamp it across the rails, holding into position. Now I'm not pretending this is the perfect solution and it's not elegant. I've come up with something else, but you'll have to wait until the next video for me to show you. Loads of you said don't buy cheap tools because you're going to use them once and throw them away. So I have listened and I went onto Amazon and people recommended Weru tools. Well, I've ended up with this well-known make called Hamborter. Ah, yes, of course. Listen, they're the best I could do. I mean, you'd think I'd be sponsored. We've got Hamborter and we've got Luliful. I mean, they're not paying me, but I think they should. Want a new life? Get a Luliful. The last piece of what's in the workshop today is this really nice bench. Now, I figured I've, got a loco here worth £6,500. I don't want to put it on some sort of plasticine bench. So this again came from Temu, but I'll tell you now, you go onto Amazon, you'll find exactly the same product for twice as much. So this is the next kit, Kit 3, this week's kit. Looks to be a lighter build than last week, but we really don't know. Now, if you want more information on the cylinders, I'll put a message up there, which is a link to the unboxing video where we look at those in more detail. In fact, I would say to you, do check that link, because until you've really had an overview of the kit, you won't necessarily understand where all the bits go. So here we have the left and the right hand cylinders. These both come from box 7. In box 8 you'll get the left and the right gear frames, and these are connected by this way shaft, also in box 8. I can't position it, but they'll go through these bearings here. The connecting rods are also from box 8, and I'm presuming the fluted detail goes to the outside, and also see the little nipple oiler there and there. They'll definitely be upwards, don't set them pointing downwards. And these are the eccentric rods and return cranks, and both of these come from box 8. And the final piece in Kit 3 is the smokebox saddle. So the smokebox rests on there to stop the whole smokebox tipping forward. Now the instructions suggest before you put the cylinders on, put these connecting rods into place. Remember, this is the outside of the cylinder. Fluted edge of the connecting rod goes to the outside, and then this bolt, which is a 10mm, needs a 10mm spanner, goes through the connecting rod, locates into there, and is held in by a small 6mm, there you go, 6mm nylock nut. So there's no way it's going to come undone. So I'm going to finger tighten that first, then I'm going to try and hold that into position, and then with my 6mm tool, I'm not going to do the whole thing on camera because it's going to take too long. There you go. Attaching the cylinders is relatively straightforward. The only thing you need to remember is that the wheels need to be rotated so that this crank is as far forward as it will go, because that is the only way that when you bolt into the cylinders here, you'll get the bolts in. I've only put 4 in, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've only put them in loosely. I will use a little bit of luniffle just on the corners, but not in the center. And to tighten them, they're a bit of a pain, but you can get in there with a 7mm spanner. I think it's a ring spanner that I'm using, but again, I'm not tightening anything up until I've got the other 4 bolts in there, 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 and there. You can see here the oiler is upright and this crank is fairly loose, so I'm just going to take the opportunity to break the pen. Oh no, disaster. It's a disaster. Never mind, we'll always get another oiler. We can't get another loco. So that's the idea. A little bit of light machine oil in there, job done. Now you can't see what's going on. I can see getting the smokebox saddle in is going to be fun. I've got the last bolt out, which I've dropped. There are 4 bolts on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the problem is, to get at this lowermost one, you're going to need to take off the lubricator cover, which slides backwards and lifts upwards and out. That can go in afterwards. That will give you, you'll get my wand of wonder, that will give you more access to these 2 bolts. So with these 4 bolts off, I've now got to do the same on the other side, and then hopefully we'll slide the smoke box saddle in. But because these frames have now been compressed, I can see it's going to be a very, very tight fit. Well, I'll be honest with you, getting those 8 bolts out that will secure the smoke box saddle in, that wasn't easy. And I am concerned, as I've said before, that I may not have a huge amount of leeway. So what I'm going to do, get my Castrol LM grease and put a sliver of grease there and there. Now hopefully this will make the saddle slide in easier, and then we've got the rather arduous task of getting the bolts in. But first things first, let's get the saddle in. Well, we've hit a snag, folks. There is no way that this smoke box support is going to go in because it's fouling on these two front sanders. Now, these two front sandboxes we were told to put in. Clearly they can't go in there. And also the front support here, this is also mentioned to be fitted later in this kit. So it looks like 1, 2, 3 items don't need to be there. Now I think I see where the problem is. These front sandboxes and this front boiler support we installed when we were putting the frames in. Now they weren't listed, but they were shown on the pictures, so we thought we'll put them in. They also aren't listed in kit 3, this kit, but it's showing me, or telling me rather, to put these in after I put the smoke box saddle in. But clearly you don't need to put these two sandboxes and this front support in before you've put the saddle in. So these are going to have to come out. Right, this is the last bolt coming off from the front sandbox. So I've taken both of those out. I'm hoping we won't need to remove the front support, but with a bit of grease. Is that going to go? Yeah. Well, it's not going to be the easiest of fits, but if I hold it there, I think you can see we can get this into place without removing this front boiler support. But you will definitely need to remove the two front sandboxes and then put those in afterwards. Okay, mystery solved. But listen, this is not in the instructions. You need to know this. This will drop in, but there are two things stopping it. So if I take it out and turn it over, you can see these brackets here. That one has got a cut-off, that one is square. The two cut-offs must go to the back, and if you drop it in, even with the grease on, look at that, straight in. The other reason that's stopping it is there are two handrails, and these are fitted forward of the smoke box. They are stopping it as well. I'm presuming the factory put these two in after the smoke box. So once you've organised the orientation of the smoke box, remember the cut-offs to the back, you have no force whatsoever. All we've got to do now is figure out how to get the bolts in. Well, finally, that was challenging to say the least. This is the last bolt going in the front sandbox. As it happened, we didn't need to remove this structure, but these have to come off. But really, Silver Crest, you need to be a bit more precise in the instructions, because this part is handed and there's no way the smoke box saddle is going to go in if you have it in the wrong orientation. But the good news is, when it is in the right orientation, no need for grease, it drops in. And I'll tell you now, I bought 3 sets of those ball-ended Allen keys. We've used every different length because it's a little bit tricky getting in. Anyway, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That took an hour. So I've put the near side of the gear frames on here. Firstly, to understand how it worked, but secondly, this side does not have a reverser attached. So my advice is go for the near side. Now this crank will be bolted into this here. My advice again is don't do that. Leave that off because you've got play here. I'll show you when we get to the off side. And the other thing is you've got 4 bolts here, 2 bolts here, securing it to these frame stretchers or supports. And you've got 5 bolts bolting it in here. These 2 on the inside were set with the bolt head out. And if you want to put it in that way, you can, but you've got to have a very tight open-ended spanner to get in there. We found it far easier just to grab a nut spinner and go in from this side and spin the nut. Might not be how it was put together in the factory, I don't know, but it works for me. So now I've fitted the near side reverser, I've also put in the way shaft, which goes longitudinally across, goes through holes in the frames and joins up with this pivot here. Now I can slide this in like so. We've just got to get it over that reverser like that. I would advise not putting this crank in because you'll need to get in here to release these bolts to tighten this shaft onto the way shaft. When you've done that, you've got movement, you see. You can get to this, you can get a spinner in. Once this is in place and locked, you can't. I'm not going to waste time building all this up. Now the reason I put the near side on before the off side is this is the only side that's got the reverser, and there'll be a reverser linkage dropping in there later. Well, good people, I'd like to say this kit is complete. You know I'm not being paid for this, and my review is honest. It is far from complete. We've spent about 4 hours today on something that maybe should have taken us 3. Big problems with the smoke box. We sorted that. However, maybe I'm being stupid, but here are the bits that we've got left over. The nomenclature I'm still not up to speed with, but in particular, these things are referred to later on in the instructions as lifting links. I can't find them in the list whatsoever. I think they might have called them return cranks. I'm going to have to talk to Mike Pavey. I think I can figure out where those 2 bits go, but the rest is a bit of a mystery. Now we could carry on, but it's getting dark, and I'm keen to get at least something up to you this week, because I've promised a video a week. So I'm afraid that's all you get. Until then, hopefully the mystery will be solved. We'll see you next weekend.